Forget what you think about smartphones this year. I've spent the last 6 months testing the most exciting, the most frustrating, and the most surprising phones on the market. In this video, I'm handing out awards to the best Android, the best iPhone, and the Minimalist phone. But before we do that, I do want to mention that the Android and the Minimalist phone on this list were both given to me by their respective brands, and I purchased the iPhone. Also, if you have any interest in purchasing one of these, I have paid links down in the description and the top comment to help you out. Now, let's get right into it. So let's kick things off with my current favorite Android phone, and that would be the Motorola Razr Ultra. Now, this is essentially the best flip clamshell style smartphone that Motorola could possibly make. It has top-of-the-line chipsets, displays, and cameras that they could fit into this thing. And their goal to unseat the Samsung Z Flip series, and I think they did a fantastic job. The showstopper is the massive 4-inch front screen. It's so usable you can practically run your life without ever flipping the phone open. I even use it for high-quality selfies since it lets you use those far superior main cameras. As for the internal display, the massive 7-inch screen gives you a ton of real estate to use. Its 4500 nits brightness didn't hiccup once in direct sunlight, it was responsive, and honestly one of my favorite screens I've ever used. The two major drawbacks here were the fact that you did have an obvious crease from the foldability-ness of the phone, if that's a word, along with the fact that the 7-inch display is very vertical, meaning it's difficult to get to that upper left side of the screen when you're holding the phone in the right hand. Jumping to the performance of the phone, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset and 16GB of RAM were incredibly impressive. I never felt like I was bogged down, everything was incredibly snappy and worked as you would expect. Now, if this phone has a weakness, it's the camera. Yes, the flip design is fantastic for unique shots, but when you need a quick snapshot, the phone struggles. Photos were fuzzy and often felt blown out. A real shame for a flagship. Also, if you've found this video at all helpful so far, don't forget to like and subscribe because it really helps me out. Do you find your screen time to be in the 8+ hours a day time slot? Well, you might want to consider a minimal phone. Now, there are true minimalist phones that take away all your apps and features. However, after testing plenty of these phones, I found that it actually can cause a reasonable amount of stress when you find you can't look up addresses, get into the storage unit, or have an app to get on mass transit. So the minimal phone here takes a bit of a different approach. It gives you a complete Android experience with all the applications you could possibly need. However, it guarantees you are going to use it less by making you type on a physical keyboard and by utilizing a smaller e-ink display. Now, don't get me wrong, that e-ink display is actually a really good one, but you won't find yourself watching YouTube or scrolling social media for long periods of time, because you'll just be too annoyed to do so. However, you do still get every single app that you could possibly need, meaning you won't have to worry about functioning in this tech-first world, but still being able to achieve some peace in your life away from companies that pay billions of dollars to get your attention for 2 seconds extra. You'll notice I haven't spent much time talking about the specs on this phone because, well, that's not really the point. It doesn't have a great camera, the screen isn't anything to write home about, unless you geek out about ink displays like me, and the phone is made primarily of plastic. However, that isn't really the point of this phone, right? Now, let's jump into my all-time favorite iPhone, and that would be my cosmic orange iPhone 17 Pro. I will admit I'm a reluctant iPhone user. I've had one as my daily driver for the past 7 years or so, while wishing I could get away with using an Android with its much more open and customizable OS. However, I've been sucked into the Apple ecosystem, with its blue bubbles, AirDrop, and amazing cameras. But before we get into the cameras, let's talk about build quality, which this thing really is amazing. While not everyone feels this way, the orange is still my favorite color 6 months later, and the two-tone look is pretty awesome. I've had no issues with damage to the phone, and that is even with using an ARC minimalist case for much of its life. When it comes to the display, I've also been impressed. Plenty bright, it's incredibly high quality with a 120Hz refresh rate. On the software side of things, the A19 Pro chipset does its job well. I never get stutters, everything works cleanly as expected, and it's very rare that a screen press is misjudged. iPhone really does have their UI down. They better, considering not much has changed since iOS 7. And I personally like and enjoy the new liquid glass styling. Continuing on with the software, this is really one of the major reasons I still have to use an iPhone. I utilize an M1 MacBook Air, soon to be upgraded, and using things like AirDrop to transfer files like the videos you're watching now is an amazing and time-saving asset. This isn't something you can always say for Android phones, which aren't nearly as vertically integrated as Apple devices. Finally, the camera. Oh, the camera. I'm a full-time content creator and I do just about every little bit of photography and videography on my phone, which is also really the main reason I haven't been able to replace it with an Android, even if I wanted to. The camera just works, and works well. But you can just about 99% of the time be sure that whatever you shoot with this camera will be usable in a final product. So yeah, I realize the Apple ecosystem may have a bad reputation for keeping people from switching out, but it's for a good reason. It just works well. Now, if you're someone that opted for an iPhone 17 Pro like I have, you might want to watch this video on the screen now, as I've ranked my top 10 favorite iPhone cases to protect your $1,100 phone purchase. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.